Red Dawn is a 1984 American war film directed by John Milius, filmed in Metrocolor and Panavision, and co-written by Milius and Kevin Reynolds. It stars Patrick Swayze, C.Thomas Howell, Lea Thompson, Sheen, and Jennifer Grey. It is notable for being the first film to be released in the U.S. with a Motion Picture Association of America PG-13 rating. The film is set in an alternate history timeline in which the United States is invaded by the Soviet Union and its Cuban and Nicaraguan allies. However, the onset of World War III is in the background and not fully elaborated. The story follows a group of American high school students who resist the occupation with guerrilla warfare, calling themselves Wolverines, after the high school mascot. Plot: the United States has gradually become strategically isolated after several European nations withdraw from NATO. At the same time, the Soviet Union and its Warsaw Pact partners aggressively expand the sphere of influence. In addition, the Ukrainian wheat harvest fails while a communist coup d'etat occurs in Mexico. On a September morning, in the small town of Calumet, Colorado, a local high school teacher pauses when he sees Soviet paratroopers landing in a nearby field. The paratroopers open fire when the teacher confronts them. Pandemonium follows as students flee amid heavy gunfire. In downtown Calumet, Cuban and Soviet troops are trying to impose order after a hasty occupation. Cuban Colonel Beer instructs the KGB to go to a local sporting goods store and obtain the records of the store's gun sales on the ATF's Form 4473, which lists citizens who have purchased firearms. Brothers Jed and Matt.It, along with their friends Robert, Danny, Daryl, and Aardvark, flee into the wilderness after hastily equipping themselves at a sporting goods store owned by Robert's father. While on the way to the mountains, they run into a Soviet roadblock, but are saved by an attacking U.S. Army UH-1 helicopter gunship. After several weeks in the forest, they sneak back into town. Jed and Matt learn that the father is being held in a re-education camp. They visit the site and speak to him through the fence. Mr. Eckert orders his sons to avenge his inevitable death. The kids visit the Masons and learn that they are behind enemy lines in occupied America. Robert's father is revealed to have been executed because of the missing inventory from his store. The Masons charge Jed and Matt with taking care of the two granddaughters, Tony and Erica. After killing Soviet soldiers in the woods, the youths begin an armed resistance against the occupation forces, calling themselves Wolverines, after the high school mascot. The occupation forces initially try reprisal tactics, executing groups of civilians following every Wolverine attack. During one of these mass executions, the fathers of Jed, Matt, and Aardvark are killed. Daryl's father, Mayor Bates, is a collaborator and tries to appease the occupation authorities. Despite the reprisal tactics, the occupation forces get nowhere. The Wolverines find a downed pilot, Lt. Colonel Andrew Tanner, who informs them of the current state of the war. Several American cities, including Washington, D.C., were obliterated by nuclear strikes. The Strategic Air Command was crippled by Cuban saboteurs, and paratroopers were dropped from fake commercial airliners to seize key positions in preparation for subsequent assaults via Mexico and Alaska. The middle third of the U.S. has been taken over, but American counterattacks have halted Soviet advances along the Rocky Mountains and the Mississippi River, and the lines have stabilized. The U.S.'s only remaining allies, Britain and China, are militarily crippled. Concerned about nuclear fallout, both sides refrain from the further use of nuclear weapons. Tanner assists the Wolverines in organizing raids against the Soviets. Soon after, in a visit to the front line, Tanner and Aardvark are killed in the crossfire of a tank battle. Daryl is caught by the Soviets after being turned in by his collaborating father. Using threats of torture, KGB officers forced Daryl to swallow a tracking device, then release him to rejoin the guerrillas. Spetsnaz are sent into the mountains carrying portable radio triangulation equipment, but are ambushed by the Wolverines. The group trace the source of the signal to Daryl, who confesses and pleads for mercy, but is executed by Robert after Jed executes a Soviet soldier. The remaining members are ambushed by Mi-24 helicopter gunships, and Robert and Tony are killed. Jed and Matt attack the Soviet headquarters in Calumet to distract the troops while Danny and Erica escape. The plan works, but Jed and Matt are wounded. Though Colonel Beale comes across the brothers, he is unable to bring himself to kill them and lets them go. Nevertheless, it is implied the brothers die in the park where they spent time as kids. Erica narrates that the U.S. repelled the Soviet invasion some time later. A plaque is seen with partisan rock in the background, with each dead Wolverine's name inscribed upon it. The rock is fenced off and an American flag flies nearby. The plaque reads, ... In the early days of World War III, guerrillas, mostly children, placed the names of the lost upon this rock. They fought here alone and gave up their lives, so that this nation shall not perish from the earth. Cast. Development. The script for Red Dawn was written by John Milius and Kevin Reynolds from a story by Reynolds. The original story, called 10 Soldiers, was more akin to Lord of the Flies, the classic novel about the aggressive nature of man, than to the action film it eventually became. Some of the changes included a shift in focus from conflict within the group to conflict between the teens and their oppressors, and the acceleration of the ages of some of the characters from early teens to high school age and beyond. The movie was filmed in and around the city of Las Vegas, New Mexico. Many of the buildings and structures which appeared in the film, including a historic Fred Harvey Company hotel adjacent to the train depot, the train yard, and a building near downtown, which was repainted with the name of Calumet, Colorado, are still there today. An old Safeway grocery store was converted to a sound stage and used for several scenes in the movie. Before starting work on the movie, the cast underwent a realistic, intensive 8-week military training course. During that time, production crews designed and built special combat vehicles in Newhall, California. Soldier of Fortune reported that the movie's T-72 tank was such a precise replica that, while it was being carted around Los Angeles, 2 CIA officers followed it to the studio and wanted to know where it had come from. Reception. Red Dawn received mixed reviews, receiving a score of 53% on Rotten Tomatoes. Red Dawn was the 20th highest-grossing film of 1984, opening on August 10, 1984 in 1,822 theaters and taking in $18,230,381 on its first weekend. Its box office gross is $38,376,497. At the time it was released, Red Dawn was considered the most violent film by the Guinness Book of Records and the National Coalition on Television Violence, with a rate of 134 acts of violence per hour, or 2.23 per minute. The DVD special edition includes an on-screen carnage counter, in a nod to this. National Review Online has named the film number 15 in its list of the best conservative movies. Adam Marcineau at the website DVD Verdict opined that the film often feels like a Republican wet dream manifested into a surrealistic Orwellian nightmare. According to Jesse Walker of Reason, the film outraged liberal critics, but further to the left it had some supporters. In a witty and perceptive piece for The Nation, Andrew Copkind called it the most convincing story about popular resistance to imperial oppression since the inimitable Battle of Algiers, adding that it'd take the Wolverines from Colorado over a small circle of friends from Harvard Square in any revolutionary situation I can imagine. Music. The film's score was composed and conducted by Basil Poledouris. It was the first soundtrack album to be released by Intrada Records. The label issued the complete score in 2007. In popular culture, Grey Dawn is a South Park episode which parodies Red Dawn. Homefront, a video game also written by John Milius, is about a Korean invasion of America. Operation Red Dawn. The operation to capture former Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein was named Operation Red Dawn, and its targets were dubbed Wolverine 1 and Wolverine 2. Army Captain Jeffrey McMurray, who named the mission, said the naming was so fitting because it was a patriotic, pro-American movie. Milius approved of the naming. "I was deeply flattered and honored. It's nice to have a lasting legacy." Remake. The remake takes place in a slightly altered version of the modern day, with North Korea invading the United States.